Today is part 2 of this acrylic painting over the Liquitex Pouring Medium. I'm going to be showing you how to paint the goldfish. Hi, I'm Lisa, the artist behind Lachri Fine Art. Last week you saw me paint the roses and actually pour the pouring medium. This week we are moving on to the goldfish. This is all being done with Liquitex heavy-bodied acrylic paints, with the exception of a couple of colors mixed with Liquitex glazing mediums. I'll have a list of all the colors I used below in the video description. I am working on a Fredrix convexo canvas. This is a round beveled edge canvas, so the edges are painted and it is hung just like you see here. If you are supporters over on Patreon, the 1-hour version of this tutorial is available for you now, complete with voiceover, so make sure to head over and check that out. Now we'll move on to this tutorial. I started by drawing my goldfish onto another piece of paper, and then I used transfer paper by Low Cornell to transfer the image onto the canvas. You can just barely see those white lines there. I then painted them straight white. I used my Liquitex Basics Titanium White mixed with my glazing medium to get that to flow on there smoothly. I ended up putting 2 coats of the white to really cover up more of the background. Once that was done, I started layering in my base coats on the fish. So I've got this orange color here, and I'm going to be painting a lot of layers over this. I don't need anything to be perfect, not a big deal. I'm now taking my brown and going for the top section. Now these fish are black on the top, but I don't want to jump straight to black, straight to the darkest color, because then I can't go darker from there. I find it to be easier to pick a sort of mid-range tone, so here I'll go with black, and then I can add darks and lights from there as needed. You can really see all of my brush strokes. That is definitely one thing when you're painting over the glazing medium. It is so, or I'm sorry, the pouring medium, the surface is so smooth that the paintbrush, your brush strokes really show. Not a big deal here because I'm going to be painting scales and everything over them, so I'm not worried about trying to smooth that out. I'm just making sure that any of those brush strokes that do show go in the right direction for the direction that the scales are going to end up going. Pulling a brighter orange into this now. You can really see as I'm painting how shiny that pouring medium layer is. You can see my reflection in that. It is so glossy, it's almost like glass. Really looks very pretty in person. So now I'm using my liner brush. This is, I believe, a number 3 synthetic hog hair liner brush, and I'm blocking in my scales. Now I'm going to paint over all of these. They're not going to stay white. What I'm doing right now is creating the texture of scales. I'm not worried about every little scale being exactly like my reference photo. What I am worried about is that they move the right direction, that they're somewhat curved around the body. They're not just straight lines coming straight down. Otherwise, the goldfish will look very flat. I'm going to do that on both fish. And I'm getting a few lines on the tail and the fins for highlights. And again, all of this is going to have a glaze over it. And if you've not already seen it, I do have a video that walks you through how to glaze. I will have a card pop up so you can check that out. So there I glazed the yellow and some of the deeper reds. I'm starting to build in up my darks on this now. I really want to make sure that these fish do not come out looking flat. Using that magenta color. Now I'm starting to pull in ivory black. The ivory black is a very translucent black versus Mars, which is going to be your more opaque black. So I'm pulling some of this ivory black through just on some of this. I'm also going to start coming through on the areas that I need to be more opaque and switching over to the Mars black to really darken some of these up. But I'm not going to darken with the Mars black in very many locations. I don't want the super dark everywhere. Just a few spots here and there. As much as possible on this one, I want to use my ivory black, the translucent black, so that you can see all of those beautiful colors and scales behind it or through it. It makes the end result look very iridescent. So I'm pulling some more of these scales through, again using white. And the reason that I'm using white and not just jumping straight to yellow is that the yellow is going to be very translucent, whereas my white is one of my most opaque colors. So either the titanium white or unbleached titanium white would work here. I like the way that the the titanium white works better, because then when I come back through with my yellows and oranges, it's a more bright color. Adding some highlights on the back of the fish. Now these won't stay just white or, well, what looks like gray now. I'm going to come back over that with some of my teal colors. I want to pick up some of the background color onto the fish so that the fish feel like they're a part of the scene and not just cut out and stuck on. I'm using little dots or adding little dots along the edge of the fin so that it looks like they're somewhat sparkly. The light is just catching those tips. Pull out that highlight a bit more. And when I do the lines with the liner brush on the tail, I've got to make sure again that the lines are going in the right direction for how those creases move. I'm not worried about them being exact to the photo, but I do want them to be close so that I have a very natural look. You can see I've outlined the eye there, which helps separate it. It lets it stand out more so that it looks more three-dimensional. So here is my teal color going right over some of those highlights that I put on earlier. If I were to have just used the teal by itself, it wouldn't have stood out enough. That's why I needed to put the white first so that it would really stand out. I've added some highlights on the bottom of this fish, and I didn't like how they looked, so I ended up painting back over it. I kind of ended up with a bit of a muddy look and removed that and had to go back over all of that a little bit later on. So you'll see me adjust the shadow under that fish on the right a few times. I need to repeat the same thing I did with the scales on this guy over here. Once I get this on there, look at how bright those scales, how beautiful those scales look when I take the yellow. That's also how I ended up with that ugly green color on the bottom side and have to fix that. But look at the scales themselves. They look so shiny. And it was just simply done with the little white dabs and then glazing color over it. It was so easy to do. And the end result I've always really liked for goldfish. They look much better, I think, if you paint them where you're glazing and doing a lot of layering than when you're just trying to get the right color in the right place every, kind of paint by number-ish. The glazes will give you so much more depth. So this guy, if you want to see the real-time version of him being painted, I did the live stream, and I'll have a card pop up so you can check that out. But just moving quickly through this, when I started with the white, he's mostly a white fish with some gold, but I don't want everything to be perfectly white because I can't go lighter than that. So just like I didn't want to go too dark on the black goldfish, here I want to make sure I've got a darker base layer for where my whites are going to be. And that's really going to be the case anytime you're painting or drawing something that's white flowers, white whatever. Don't start out with white. I mean, you can get a white base like I did here to cover my background, but then I made a mid-range tone so that I could go both lighter and darker from there. Once that dried, I came through and started painting in my scales, just like I did on the black fish. I'm also adding my highlights on the tip of the tail and fins. And I will come back through with a bolder orange along the edge of the fin to really let that separate from the flowers because I don't want it to completely blend in with the roses. And that's going to be a little bit more difficult, especially given I'm using the exact same colors as I did on the roses. Anywhere where you're seeing me glaze over the white portions, I'm using my transparent mixing white in with whatever color I need. I don't want to use my titanium white because it would be too opaque. It would completely cover up the previous layers, which defeats the point of, or the purpose of, glazing. So you can see I'm building a lot more with the darks. I'm using a lot of magenta in this guy. Anytime that I use orange, I'm almost guaranteed to use magenta. I just love those colors together. It doesn't matter to me whether or not my reference photo calls for it. Those colors go together in my world. They just look beautiful together. And so shading my darker oranges with that deep magenta worked perfectly. Then from here, I'm able to just use a bit of white for my highlights. I don't want to go too crazy with those. And then pulling my teal color around the edges like I did on the other two fish. This lets him feel more like he's a part of the scene. And then the very last thing I'm going to do is paint bubbles. And the bubbles here are going way too fast, so you cannot even remotely see what I'm doing. But don't worry, I have a video showing you exactly how to paint those. I will have a card pop up so you can check those out. I kept these very simple, just like I do on that video. And that is my finished painting. I will go back over and glaze both the pouring medium, the fish, and the roses all together with my high gloss varnish. I will use Liquitex for that, and that will give everything a nice even shine because right now only that background is super shiny. The fish and the roses are a little bit dull being that it's just acrylic paint, but once that varnish is over everything, it's going to even it all out and give it all a really nice high gloss. Thanks for watching. Again, if you are supporters over on Patreon, I have the 1-hour version of this tutorial complete with voiceover and some real-time clips available for you to watch now, so make sure to head over and check that out. If you're new to my channel, I have new video critiques every Tuesday where I'm critiquing your original paintings or drawings, my own speak paintings, drawings, and tutorials every Wednesday, art Q&A videos every Thursday, artist vlogs each Saturday, and now I've started doing live streaming most Wednesdays. So if you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe so you don't miss out on anything, and you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google+, all of the social media sites are linked below in the video description where you can keep up with news, my newest work, and be notified of when those live streams are coming up. Okay, don't judge me, but it's Tuesday, November, I don't know, not even Thanksgiving yet is the point here. Let's see, the 17th of November, I have a friend coming over. We're totally decorating my living room for Christmas. I'm just too excited, I can't wait.